1. Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. We're back remotely. This episode is brought to you by our new title sponsor, Join Cycling, title sponsor of the podcast. Going forward, we announced that as our big announcement yesterday. Join Cycling brought our weekly show to life that we've been wanting to do for a couple of years, and now they are on board with us for the future, which we're really, really happy about. So big shout out to them, the best adaptive and flexible training plans on the market. And thanks to all of you who've been using the platform as well. But before we get into Giro Stage 10 and the route, how are you, Benji? Big travel day.
Ooh, it was a big travel day. Flight was delayed.
UK. Oh, yeah.
It was a mistake with the plane. And then
mechanical with the plane.
They said, let's switch the plane. And then I'm get on the plane and they say, we didn't switch the plane, but we found a solution.
Fuck that. Give me a different one.
I hate that.
Don't tell me.
Exactly. Either you don't tell me it's the same plane or you give me a new plane. I can't handle that. I'm already a pretty fearful flyer. So, but anyway, I landed safely. So they must have fixed it. So that's the most important part. A bit sad that we're doing these remote now, but we'll make it as fun as usual.
So today's Giro Stage 10. I got to say, not my favorite stage design. But stage design isn't everything, you know. You can have brutal mountain stages like the end of the Giro last year, and the riders, it's a cliche, but they do really make the race. And once again, it was a fantastic stage. The riders got the most out of this stage. I really enjoyed it, from Pompeii to Cusano Mutri. We're in as far south as we go in the Giro this year. Pompeii, that's near Naples, south of Naples, right? My wife wants to go there on a holiday. She wants to see Herculaneum in Pompeii.
No clue, but is that not near the Vesuvio volcano?
Yeah. I went there once when I was like 12. So hot. Anyway, 142 kilometers. Yeah, I was doing archaeology. 142 Ks. First 45 kilometers are absolutely flat. Then it's very hard. The last 90 kilometers have more or less 3,000 meters of climbing in them, which is a very intense stage, including a few uncategorized climbs, like a 3K, 8.3% uncategorized climb, bit mean. Then there's the Camposauro, 6K, 7.6%. It's not that easy. Descent, short little rolling valley. Another, the Gardia San Framondi, where the Intergiro points were, 5K, 6.5%, also unclassified. So poor old Simon Geschke is getting shafted a bit today in the breakaway. Then a rolling 25Ks up and down before the Cusano Mutri, where we didn't expect big GC gaps, nor were they. 18Ks, 5.6% average. It's a climb in, like 2-3 parts. First 6Ks, maybe 7%. Decent enough. Then the middle 5Ks, there's a couple of shallow bits, maybe 3% or nothing. And then the last 5Ks are decently hard, 7%. It's a long climb. Starts low, finishes not that high, not that steep. Yeah, with nothing too much before it. We didn't expect big GC gas, Benji, but you never know. You never know who wants to be in the break. You never know who wants to control. What did you think would be... Did you think Poggi would go for it today in UAE?
Honestly, I low-key did, because it is the kind of parkour I had a feeling, okay, this is the type of stage where historically they really go for it. Easy to control, 142 kilometers with a flat start, so you're more likely to see the rouleurs going in a breakaway and being successful in doing that than the actual, like, 60-kilo climbers, because, well, simply if a rouleur gets in the breakaway, they can easier put in the absolute watts than a lighter climber would be able to do on the flat. And in addition to that, the flat start also makes it harder for a breakaway to form, because riders neutralize themselves. And that's what I want to get to first. The breakaway formation starts exactly when the stage starts. And initially, UAE remained fairly passive, but that's kind of okay, because they're basically trusting the riders that are going to try to go in the breakaway to neutralize other attackers. So let's say 5 riders go up the road. Cor Vos says, well, damn it, Geschke will want to go for KOM, so we need to get in that breakaway. So then they make a move from the peloton. Then 17 other people decide to follow that. Then UAE kind of chains on to that and gradually follows that without really doing much. And that way, that first attack is neutralized by that attack of the Cor Vos rider. And that's basically the scenario that happened here for, let's say, is it fair to say 40, 50 kilometers?
Yeah, just stop, start, stop, start. UAE, I think UAE were doing it like the other day, where they weren't actually before the stage. They, if you to be believed, they said they didn't want to go for the stage, and then it kind of Bjerg came back and he said, "Let's go for it on Pratidativo." Today in the first jumping, they were nowhere, right? Like,
not really. They weren't in like the first 30 riders. They moved up a bit later though, like after like 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers. We did see a rider or two, Oliveira maybe moving up, stuff like that, and actually being part of it. Langen also coming up the front at some point, but it wasn't actively trying to close down any counterattacks, because in the past we would have seen 4 riders going up the road, a counterattack coming, and then UAE responding to the counterattack, neutralizing that.
Yeah, they weren't getting in moves. They were chilling.
Exactly. They weren't neutralizing any counterattacks. They weren't necessarily responding to big groups. They were just gradually trying to passively follow moves to keep it all a bit together if possible, but not investing massively in this phase. And that could be two things. That could be, okay, we don't necessarily want to go for the stage, so we're going to see who's going in the breakaway, and then if someone's dangerous in there, we have to try and chase or follow that. On the other end, that could also be that they were more of the opinion of, okay, we fully trust the fact that these attackers are going to self-neutralize themselves until we arrive at the climb. There's no way a group is going to go because so many people want to go in the breakaway. So that's also possible, but that's a little more risky. I feel like you at least want someone a bit close if that's your strategy, if that makes sense.
I think it's a risk worth taking, though, if you got the team they have. It's kind of what they did on TiVo. I don't mind it. I think they did. I think UAE played today absolutely perfectly, start to finish. Ineos clearly wanted to be in Benji. Chef's jumping off from the gun. He's on the car in neutral, looking to go. Bora, I couldn't figure out what Bora were doing, honestly. To me, it looked like they were neutralizing moves for a period, and then they went away, and then they neutralized, and then eventually Schachman jumped later. I couldn't quite figure out what Bora were doing, frankly. They'd come up to the front with 3 guys block up. I was like, I couldn't figure it out why they were controlling the break. I thought, do they want to go today with Martinez? I just made no sense.
The only possible solution there is that you do believe that you can either do something with Martinez, or you want to prevent an opposing team for the podium to get in the breakaway. But I felt like they were attacking or controlling random attacks and not necessarily a specific team or something. So I couldn't figure it out too easily either, but I'm not sure they necessarily needed to do that personally. But
it was great start to finish, in that no one had gone. Then I thought, I was like, where's all the tug buddies? This is like a tug buddy like start to a stage, because it's a mountaintop finish with a 45k flat start. You need your tuggers. And I thought a lot of teams did a really bad job of that initially. Tratnik's jumping. I'm like, where's Affini? Where's Van Dijk? Valter's jumping on the flat. Where's Affini, Van Dijk? Chef's jumping with no Ganna or Swift. Geschke's jumping with no Stefano Aldani. You know, and I was like, where the, and then suddenly 45 k's in hour jumping, we get to the false light uphill. Affini does a full lead out. And the thing with a tug buddy like this, they're one and done. Like, they'll give you a 45-second pull, but then they're gone. So you gotta, it either goes or it doesn't. Affini does a full gas lead out. Group goes, got Ganna, Valter, Geschke maybe. It looked good. It had a real gap. And I'm like, this is it. And it still didn't go.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a small aspect there that we also need to mention, because as this was happening, we're nearing an intermediate sprint. And as that move from Affini came with that group that you just mentioned, there were already 3 riders up the road. De Marchi, Clark, and Quinten Hermans. And I'm going to put on my PlayStation hat for a second here. And I'm going to say, Quinten Hermans, initially in that 3-man group, didn't really take over. He was actively skipping turns. So the only reason for me that could be possible is that they're thinking about the intermediate sprint for Groves, or he's totally shit. I'm going to go for the PlayStation side and say they're doing it for Groves.
Argent was fucked.
I don't believe so, because it was the first move he was in. And then once they get to the intermediate sprint, he conveniently drops just before the intermediate sprint, just being passed by Groves by the line. So Groves gets more points. So many coincidences for me. Like,
Detective Benji.
I think Alpecin was playing PlayStation today, and it kind of worked.
Maybe, yeah. Groves has been mopping up those intermediate points. It does help that they're on the uphill kickers. A lot of these placements, which really make a big difference. Milan didn't go for it, but it got brought back, because the reason that move with Ganna and Valter and co didn't go was because DSM weren't in. And DSM, they wanted to be in today, and they wanted to be in with numbers. We get to the next climb. Where are we now, Benji? We're at the Bivio Taberno. We're 65 Ks in. I didn't need to go on the trainer and go check my timestamp on Strava. I had a workout to do on Join. I was sitting there, I got to go, and still the break hasn't gone. Get to this 3K 8% climb, it goes. Finally. I would say UAE, they came to the front with Novak. They're pacing a good pace. Huge group goes with, I'll go quickly, I'll go real fast. Tobias Foss, Conchi, Velasco, Schachman. He goes across late, almost instinctively. Geschke for KOM points. The PP brothers, Chavez, Pellini, Frigo, Bajoli, Juanpe, Barta, Alaphilippe, Mauri, Bardet, Hamilton, Vermarca. Two of the best climbers on DSM and their GC leader. Demarki Zana, but Demarki's been in the break already with Clark.
Yeah.
Mattia Bice, Jan Tratnik makes it. Pozzovivo, Covilli, Fiorelli, and Caruso. UAE set a good pace. It's on like 8 seconds. And then eventually, as they get to the descent, they let Bjerg come back and the gap just explodes. Bjerg, he's not a good descender, that guy.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a bit of a storyline to how they let it go. Because initially it looked like they were still like, okay, this is large group, let's set a proper tempo behind it.
Yeah, it was fast.
By the top, it was like, okay, we might have to settle for this breakaway, so let's just ride tempo. And I think it still took a little bit for them to fully settle towards, okay, this breakaway, we're not going to choose to go for the stage today. Because they still kept it relatively close for like the first 20 kilometers.
Nah, not the first 20. No. It blew out straight away on the descent.
Yeah, but not to the 5 minutes. It first went to
no, not
3,
to 5. Not
then
to
it
5.
went down again, and then it went to 5.
I'm more meaning the break actually forming. They were literally not letting it properly form. I feel like they keep it within 15 seconds until they know who's in the group. They're like, pace, because, okay, who's in the group? Okay, not a problem. And then, they do let it out on that descent. It goes to 2 minutes or whatever. I can't remember. It goes out a decent amount. We see Oliveira and Milano. That's the first time they've been on the front this Giro. That's a big signal that if you got Novak and Bjerg pacing, okay, that's different. They got Oliveira and Milano pacing, who they both did a good job today as well. And so, status quo, I think that group, Benji, was dysfunctional. It's too big. Yeah. You immediately see it's too big. Everybody's leaning on Chris Hamilton. They're like, Bardet, what's he on in GC going into this? 750 or something? 750. Zana's on 712. He does have a Demarki helper, but he's cooked. And so, everyone's looking at DSM to pull. And they do. They pull the first long climb that the break has to, the Campo Sora. I call it, the dinosaur climb. Then there's a descent, little hill, and then the Gardia San Framondi, Benji. It's about crest 40 Ks from the finish. It's got a decent 18K valley before the long climb starts. It's got an Intergiro sprint at the top. It's 5K, 6.5%. Everyone's in mucking about. Everyone's Alaphilippe's mucking about at the back, and then he drops. And I was immediately thinking, Fuga time. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and it's true, because at these moments, it's also some riders in that group. There's multiple riders in that group that cannot win if this group goes to the climb. So they need to anticipate. And that's what you're referring to, fuga de la fuga, basically a term used for breakaway from the breakaway. And as the intermediate sprint arrived, which was still with 36-ish kilometers to go, we see Fiorelli jumping for the intermediate sprint, and then an attack in the distance. It's Jan Tratnik that attacks. At first, it looked like people were in his wheel, but by the time he hits that intermediate sprint, he's actually going solo behind Fiorelli. Fiorelli, who kind of sits up, and then Tratnik flies past, and that's how Tratnik ends up with a gap over the top of this climb. And that gap kept expanding because initially the cooperation behind was not that perfect, and you had a few attacks going over that top as well in the group behind. And then suddenly, 2 kilometers later, a second group, a second Fuga de la Fuga, is created behind Jan Tratnik. And that group includes the following: Bardet, Bajoli, Frigo, and Valentin Parepintre. So it's the VPP that is in there. There was a fifth rider in there at first, but I think he got dropped by that group
Fiorelli,
as they went over the top. Was it Fiorelli that went for the intermediate sprint that then dropped?
Maybe. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, yeah. So I was, hand on heart, I thought Tratnik's got no chance if he goes to the bottom of this climb with Romain Bardet and VPP. Yeah. Maybe that's not true, but
it's true.
yeah, God, and there's others here. The favorites in this group are the PP brothers, Geshka, Bardet, and Zana. Like these are fringe GC. Bardi's not even a fringe GC guy. These are proper climbers, and this is an 18K climb. And in the last six Ks are like 7%. It's not a, and so the idea was, can Tratnik go with a Marco Frigo? And then they got 18Ks of Valley to work. And it started to look good for Tratnik, Benji, because I think Bardet and Trek fucked up. Why would Bardet work with that Fuga? He's got Hamilton stomping today, by the way. And Vermarka in the group behind. For this 18Ks of rolling terrain, why would he want to chop off? And they're like 30 seconds behind. Just sit in, you'll get caught, because also same with Baggioli. Why would Baggioli do it? Juanpe is your best climber. No, in the group behind.
It's like they both played themselves, but in a different way. As in, Bardet ended up in a group where he doesn't have those domestiques doing the work for him, and Baggioli ends up being a group with, on paper, his better climber being in the other group behind him. So they're both stuck in a situation that they now have to try and figure out how to get the best out of. And we got to talk about the time gaps. Tratnik now has, let's say, 40 seconds on the group with Parapantre, Frigo, Baggioli, and Bardet. And then behind that, there's another 35 seconds towards the next group, which includes everybody else, like Juanpe, for example, but also the DSM employees, the DSM.
But neither of them can pull. Neither of them, they're all blocking.
Yeah, they're blocking because their riders at the front, and then they're all chained up. Everybody's in a situation that they're chained up in, and at first, group 2 on the undulating terrain that is basically towards the foot of the final climb, the second group ain't gaining time on Tratnik. Tratnik's looking good. Tratnik's gaining time on them.
Yeah, and that was with Frigo's going super hard. He's good in that terrain, and I think that made a big difference there. If you got someone like Frigo with Tratnik, and then it's Baggioli, Bardet, and VPP who's like 50 kegs chopping, could have been different. But yeah, I thought it was interesting the way DSM played it with Bardet, with Hamilton and Vermarka on such a good day. I think. Anyway, it starts raining. It looks slippery. I don't think anyone crashed of note in the end. But yeah, the group 3 behind, you can see Pozzovivo attacking on hills. He's getting frustrated. Juanpe's attacking because he's chained up. He can't pull the group because Baggioli's in front. And really the only person chasing is an absolutely fried Demarchi, who started the break with Clark, or was in with Clark and Hermans, who's cooked for Zana. So look, it's really, really interesting. In the GC group behind, we should say Bahrain came to the front to begin to pull to stop Bardet climbing up GC too far, because he was, to protect Tiberi's GC position and maybe do something later. But yeah, we get to the final climb. Tratnik, good gap, maybe a minute, I can't remember. And Frigo drops. Baggioli eventually drops. Tratnik's not losing too much time, though, in the first 2 sections. Maybe he loses 20 seconds. He's holding it okay. But then the last 6Ks are 7%. And the 2 French guys, particularly VPP, they weren't going all out yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also a fake news climb. Like, we got to use that term for this one, because the first half, there's a portion of proper climbing in there. Then the middle is basically half flat. And then the last portion is a steep part, again, like you mentioned, which includes kilometers that are 8%, but also ones that are 6%. So it's a bit of a vibe in between for those final kilometers. So that last portion is really where those climbers can get the best out of Tratnik, who has also been riding at the front this whole time. But I got to be honest, at the foot of the climb, I was like, ooh, they might have trouble bringing this back, especially when halfway to climb, the gap was not that, it wasn't dropping that quickly. It was like 43 seconds, 41 seconds, hung around there for a while. But then we entered the last 4 kilometers, and there was one of these kilometer banners where I was like, where we saw a helicopter view of like both groups, Tratnik and then the other 2. And I was like, this doesn't look like 39 seconds. And I started counting at the banner, and I came to like 33 if I'm being very, very willing to give them the second.
Yeah, I was sub 30,
it was between 25 and 30 probably. So the Italian time gaps were acting up today, and
Swiss
that
time
became
gaps,
very
actually.
clear. Well, yeah, but it's especially in Italian races.
Yeah, they were. You couldn't trust him, and then he was saying 20 seconds, and VPP was on Tratnik's ass. I was like, I don't know if that's 20 seconds. Am I watching this in slow motion or something? We should also say the duo, they ganged up on Baggioli. They had a conversation and said, we go, and then they dropped that Baggioli, which, I mean,
was
I don't
inevitable
know.
anyway.
Yeah, but why attack him like he's going to drop anyway? I thought that was strange. Anyway, Bardet's, I think, riding primarily for his GC gap because Bahrain are really pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's his decision. If he really has the podium legs, Benji, then he rides for his GC gap and then also easily wins today, in my opinion. So
I see that.
It's up to him what he wants to go for top 5 or a stage, but personally stage. But it seems that way. And VPP, he's on 16 minutes. He can play a little bit more coy. And so they wait. And then eventually VPP, after not pulling for too long and definitely not pulling when he is pulling for very hard, he whacks Bardet with that there 3Ks, goes across to Tratnik, attacks across him. Bardet never gets back onto the wheel. He goes past Tratnik, but he's not going even much faster than him. And VPP looks like he's dancing away for his first professional victory, Benji. And that's what happens. He wins. He plays usually this is what happens, is the guy with less to lose on GC can play the other a bit more. And he comes first. Huge win. Bardet second. 30 seconds behind, so that's a decent old gap. Over 3 kilometers, not that hard. Tratnik holds on to third on 1 minute. Baggioli, we never saw him on camera again, but he actually finishes fourth on 1:17. APP leads out the group behind, celebrating actually, because his brother won. He was also on a good level because he wouldn't have been pulling. He finishes fifth, and Geshka, Zana, Pozzovivo, Conchi, and Chavito.
Yes, indeed. Honestly, it's nice to see the PP brothers both get a Giro stage win in 2 years' time. Aurélien last year against Leknesund on stage 4, if I recall correctly. Now seeing VPP basically beat up one of his most favorable riders in France, Romain Bardet, because I heard him say that he looked up to Bardet, which is pretty cool to see that he then becomes the apprentice becomes the master kind of vibe I had going on seeing him do that. And the thing with Tratnik is like, he played his cards. That was the strategy that could have most likely led to him winning. If he would have waited till the final climb, it wouldn't have happened. So good ride by him as well. And that's the best he could have done. When it comes to the rest of the riders in that breakaway, like, well, could Bardet have played it differently? Yes. I think VPP wins anyway? Yes.
Well, I was expecting more riders to fuga with him, Benji.
Yeah, I see that.
I was really expecting like Schachmann or Velasco or Conchi to fuga with him, but it didn't happen. So
yeah, but now while we spoke about the breakaway action, stuff also went down in the GC group a little bit at least, and that started off like you said with Bahrain setting up some pacing at the start of the climb because Bardet was in the breakaway, but then it turned into something more when Caruso dropped back from being dropped in the breakaway and started doing a bit of a lead out for Tiberi, or at least satellite rider action pacing for him on the final climb. And then eventually Tiberi himself does a move, he attacks, and it looked at first like Tiberi and Poggi had initial separation because Micah was in the wheel, then Micah let the gap go, and then I think O'Connor or one of the decathlon guys had to close that down. But during that moment, things I noticed, Arensman seemed to be in a bit of trouble. Secondly, Magnus Sheffield looked absolutely amazing. The fact that he was there, that is insane climbing performance.
If he got on the break, he could have won today.
Yes, but he tried and didn't make the right breakaway. So I can't blame him for that.
No, I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying with that level, he maybe won.
Jan Uiterbroeks, 55 acceleration. The man has negative acceleration.
He's never in the wheel. He's never drafting on these climbs in the wheel. Always outside.
Today he looked a bit worse than usual, and in my head I was like, oh, it's probably going to be that he always rides like that. But a bit later, he did get exposed a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we venture into the final kilometer. Alex Baudin goes to the front. He gets hyped up because the PP brothers did well in the breakaway. And he starts to pace a bit of a lead out for Ben O'Connor, which I like seeing some initiative in that GC group, because otherwise it would have been very boring there. We see, while Baudin is doing that, Arensman in the background is having trouble, is straight up dropping. Sheffield is waiting for him. Took a bit, but eventually waits for Arensman in the final kilometer, starts pacing Arensman to the line. We also see Kian Uiterbroeks being dropped in the final kilometer, and that was still when there was the lead out of the rise, wasn't when O'Connor has attacked yet. So he was in proper trouble there. Am I a bit worried for the coming week and a half? Maybe. If he has a bad day somewhere, that can have a consequence. Maybe Olaf Koy's illness of this morning has passed on to Kian Uiterbroeks. Let's hope not. But in addition to that, O'Connor goes, Tiberi gets gapped, and did you spot anything else? Because half of the chat is either joking or serious when they're saying that Pogacar looked washed in the final 20 meters, but
he was chilling.
I doubt that.
O'Connor was looking to see, he's really smart. You have a domestique, and this is what Ineos didn't do with Arensman on TiVo. If you feel good, O'Connor felt good, right?
Yeah.
If he attacks himself straight away, waste of time. You have the whole peloton on your wheel. So what you do is you put Bo down on the front, drive it super hard, and see if someone has an issue. Kian did. Arensman did. Great. And then Boxlight, now it's worth. I can invest fully sprinting the last 300, 400 meters. And he looked really, really good. And even Tiberi had on a gap. So really, really, Asia to our unbelievable day. And O'Connor wins, or not win. He leads the group behind in that sprint. Martinez, Thomas, Pogacar, and Rubio on the same time. 4 seconds behind is Tiberi, Hertz, Stora, Fortunato, Baudin. And then Uiterbroeks loses 13 seconds. And Arensman loses 23 seconds. They're the only... I can't see any other relevant GC riders.
Did Stora drop or not?
No, he was on the 4 second gap, I think.
Okay.
He was in the Tiberi group. And that's the thing with Tiberi, again. Does Tiberi drop if he doesn't do those moves in the last 2Ks?
Probably, but I think it's worth seeing whether you can find some exposing of your opponents. Like, eventually
he's
he took
riding
time
against
on
Kian,
Uiterbroeks.
by the way.
Yeah. All his white jersey opponents lost time to him today, so...
Exactly.
I don't think he cares about those 4 seconds too much.
Yep. Okay, and here's the revised GC. So Pogacar still 240 ahead of Thomas, 240 ahead of Martinez, 258 ahead of Thomas. Those time gaps are unchanged. Ben O'Connor on 339, so the top four is all the same. Uiterbroeks still in fifth, but he loses 13 seconds to those guys, and he loses, quick maths, 9 seconds to Tiberi. So Tiberi's coming close. He's 12 seconds behind Uiterbroeks and for the white jersey on 427. Bardet moves up 7 spots into 457. I think we'll talk a word on that in a second. Fortunato goes to 519. Zana moves up to 9th on 523. Rubio, Arensman, Hertz, Stora all lose 2 spots because of Bardet and Zana in the breakaway, although they didn't really lose too much time. On the Bardet thing, Benji, it's kind of he's really in an annoying spot now where he gained a lot of time, sure, but he gained not enough time to be in like provisional third, but he gained too much time where I don't think they're going to let him in the break a second day.
It depends, because
Bahrain
the next
won't.
GC obstacle is a time trial.
True,
and Tiberi will take time on Bardet. So that might again put him in the spot where he can attack again, depending on how much time he loses on the time trial. So I think it depends on that, but I agree that he's right now with these GC gaps, he wouldn't be able to get in there without at least some unhappy Bahrainis.
Yeah. Or even Decathlon will probably pull, So that's he's in 7th, but we'll see. But listen, the guys behind him are not the best TTers in the world either, except for Arensman on about a minute behind him in 11th. So Arensman will come back into the top 10 in the TT, no doubt.
Mate, he's going to be close to top 5.
Yeah. Yep. There will be. He's coming right back into it.
One thing, Rubio, for example, he's now in 10th in GC. He's on 528, so a bit more of a gap of Bardet, but it's actually not that much of a difference, to be honest, in terms of time. Just like 29, whatever, I can't count, so 31 seconds, something like that. But
he's also flying. He finished with Poggi, G, and Martinez and Ben O'Connor.
Pelayo Sanchez said in an interview, I saw it in Cycling Up to Date, where Pelayo Sanchez said, "We are ambitious for Rubio to potentially get the podium." I think top 5 is realistic.
He really is climbing well. Like, who knows?
We've got a 30-kilometer TT coming, so I think that's...
Yeah. That's no good, is it? For him, for a lot of these guys. KOM, Simon Geschke, he said it's a big goal. He went in the break and he's up to second, but he's about 46 points behind Pogacar.
Yeah.
He's going to need to take a lot in the third week. That's where all the points are. Youth jersey, as I said, Tiberi goes closer to Otterbrooks, 12 seconds behind. And then after the TT, he will be back. He'll be in white, one would think. But yeah, it's interesting to know, like, are people on a bad day? Did this finish not suit them? Are they actually sick? You know, there's a lot of talk about, even Pogacar said, oh, I got some allergies or something. Or he admitted to having like a stuffy nose. Not that he's still went into the rest day on 3 mins.
Allergic to losing.
Yeah, allergic to losing. It's like, just like me. By
the way.
And we've had some abandons this morning, which we probably should have led with. Like Coy out after winning on stage 9, high fever, gone.
Vernon,
another good young sprinter. Meyerhofer, all 3 good sprinters out. Anyone else?
I don't know if there was anyone else. I feel like there was, but...
Canter. All sprinters.
Yes. Coincidence? I don't know. When I looked at the news, a lot of people were insinuating, okay, is this because we've got the mountains coming, whatever? But I'm looking at this week's parkour, and there's 2 opportunities this week for sprinters. Just wait a few days.
Also,
stage 14, dip out.
Coy, Meyerhofer, and Werner also all climb well.
Yeah, so
these are their best sprint jet stages.
It makes no sense to me, that theory. If they would have done it before the Livigno stage or before the time trial even, perfectly fine. That's very valid. I would probably take Jacobsen out that day, and all maybe even Merlier if he's not even close when it comes to the point classification. So that's the thought process about that. But I do have to call you out. It's a personal thing. At the start of this podcast, you said you really enjoyed the stage. I actually found it pretty boring.
Really?
This is probably just a me thing.
It's a great break battle.
I didn't find it that great of a break battle. Like for 45 minutes, we just looked at Tratnik having a large gap on 2 riders trying to chase him, and whether they caught him or not, it looked like it was going to happen, but
I don't know, it was tension.
There was not much happening for me. It might just be a me thing. I've never been in love with breakaway battles that have like a few things happening. I need constant action when it comes to breakaways for it to be interesting to me.
I don't know. With this sort of, I didn't like the parkour design at all, and to get Bahrain trying something and some small gaps in GC, and then will they catch Tratnik? Will they not? And then VPP betrays Bardet and attacks him. I liked it.
What is the worst stage so far for you?
TiVo.
Ooh, for me this is worse. For me, this is the worst one.
TiVo, I mean, what? TiVo, you knew who would win 3 hours before the finish.
Yeah, but it was super interesting to me to figure out how they were going to do it. Are they going to pull all out, or is Porgy going to attack?
By doing the Roglic train. I could skip that, brother.
It happening once is not an issue for me. I enjoyed that stage, but it happening multiple times would have been boring.
What other stage? It would have been pretty good.
Yeah, this is the first one where I'm like, yeah, week 2 of the Giro has arrived.
I think for a week 2 mountain stage with this design, we got as good as we could hope for. But anyway, tomorrow
maybe I just missed the watch-alongs, eh?
Maybe. Tomorrow might take the crown, who knows? Stage 11 from Foiano di Val Fortore to Francavilla al Mare, 207 kilometers. The key is in the name. They go east from towards the... Is that which side's the Mediterranean? Or is Italy surrounded by the Mediterranean?
Italy surrounded by the Mediterranean.
So it's on both sides of Italy's the Mediterranean?
The Adriatic and the Tirreno, whatever sea.
Adriatico.
They're both
That's
part
how
of the Mediterranean.
Tirreno goes from west to east. So Tirreno, Adriatico. Or does it change some years?
No.
Are you sure that Tirreno goes always west to east?
Otherwise, the race would be calling Adriatico Tirreno. No?
Fuck. My Google results in Catalan. It's difficult with... I'm learning about
the race
Jesus.
is called Tirreno Adriatico, so it has to go from the Tirreno Sea to the Adriatico one. Which is the
Tirreno Sea?
I don't fucking know. They're both Mediterranean for me. So it's just
but
the Tour de Méditerranée.
Yeah, but you're saying, yes, okay. Tirreno Sea is the western.
The right one. No. Northwest. Yeah?
Left. West.
West is right.
Look straight ahead.
Are
Look
we
straight
stupid?
ahead. Look straight ahead. Your left hand is west.
Oh, yes, it is. Holy fuck, I'm stupid.
But anyway, we're going to the coast, on the eastern coast, towards the Atlantic, and the first 6Ks 3.6%. So we are starting with an uphill for once. We then have a descent, little valley, and then the Pietra Catella 8.4Ks 5.5%. Some more rolling hills. So we got 3 decent climbs in the first hour and 20 minutes, and then some more rolling hills on a fake descent before about 100 Ks along the coast, which isn't perfectly flat. There's also a hill 12 Ks from the finish. It's going to be, I think, Alpecin, Benji.
Yeah.
Trying to do what they did the other day. Do you think that's what they should do?
I see no issue with doing that again. Yes, they're going to be shit on by everybody else. I think it's also an opportunity for breakaway still as well.
Break. That's what I mean, though. Should they not just try to get Groves and Hermans in the break?
Yeah, it is risky, because there's a lot of sprint teams that are still going to try and control it. Are you more likely to beat the sprinters by pacing hard and dropping their domestiques on the climb, or going in the breakaway? Because if you get caught again, you're fucked too, eh?
Yeah, but if Groves wants to win Ciclamino, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only way for him to take a 50 or 35 point delta is to go in the break. Even if he wins the stage from the bunch sprint, that's not helping Ciclamino that much. If he goes in the break, he takes all the IS, and even if he comes second or third, he gets a huge delta, assuming there's 10 guys in the break or something, to Milan behind. So I think if he's going for Ciclamino, he has to go in the break. I also do not believe that from the peloton you will set a hard pace and keep Milan behind for 200 kilometers.
I don't have that belief either. I'm just thinking about the risk reward as if you go in the breakaway, you're also risking just not having any points at the finish line. That's also
but you have to adopt a higher variance strategy if you're not the favorite. If they play it conventionally, Milan will just win Ciclamino.
I think so too. But
they got to do something different.
They're not going to do that. I don't see Alpecin putting Groves in the breakaway on this stage.
They should. If it was just for the stage, okay, take your chances. Koi's out now, because now Visma won't chase, or not that they have, Hairsing's out anyway. Merlier might drop, Fabio will drop, but I would, if I was them, I'd go Hermans and Groves in the break with Conchi. Take your chances. They won't do it, but
they won't do it.
Also, because the break can still win, even if you don't do that. This is a hard stage to control.
Yeah, but the one thing I don't want to see is Alpecin being the ones controlling this stage, because they did that for Little Track a few times already.
Yeah, the other day, not stage 5, but the other sprint. I think the break's gonna win anyway, because we got some hungry guys to get in the break, and the opening with 2 climbs, I think, is going to really demoralize some riders. There's also a lot of sickness going about. Who knows how many domestiques, are battling through that can't help, that'll get dropped straight away. So fast start uphill. I think the break is going to win. Who do I like? That's always a good question. I'm going to go with Velasco.
Okay. If it's a sprint, Milan is the favorite.
Yeah.
I might as well also go for a break rider just for fun. I'm going to go for...
Yeah, if it's a sprint, Milan will win.
I'm going to go for... someone like Honoré?
Okay.
If he's invisible, at this race?
Biffy said he's getting better on Instagram. But, yeah, he's not there looking that good. What about Bastien Tranchant or Aurélien Paris-Panstre again?
I wouldn't have APP as my guy on this parkour.
What about Johnny?
I think it's a possibility, but it's not the likeliest stage for him to win.
I'm sticking with, who did I pick? Velasco. He had to be good to get in that break today uphill, so he must be climbing well, and he's got a fast sprint.
I just think there's going to be too many teams again that are going to be like, oh, but we've got a sprinter,
if you're Jaco,
so we're going to go for a sprinter.
You see what? Coy didn't even fight Ewan for Milan's wheel in that stage he won 9. He literally just came across you and said, have it. You just gave it to him.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying he's not fast, but then DeMarcus going to be so tired. I don't know. Like, if you're into Marche, I guess Mikkel's taken top 5s. Like, now Coy's out. All of a sudden, Mikkels is looking for top 5s in the bunch sprints, and that's for UCI points. So,
yeah.
I can see. I can see what you're saying. I'm more hoping rather than really believing it will happen.
Yeah.
Probably stage 12 is really the break one.
I actually believe more in Ghana than Narvaez on this stage.
From the break. Yeah. What's the one that caught one with ahead of Affini and co?
Jesus.
Oh no! I swear Affini got beaten in a.
Ooh, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm taking a look. And I cannot figure it out. Okay. So looks like someone dropped out, and it is not me. Okay. Anyway, that's about it when it comes to today's Lanterne Recycling podcast. But because Patrick just left out of the window with his Wi-Fi, so guess we're gonna have to leave it at that. Thanks to Join for being a partner for the Lanterne Recycling podcast as title sponsor now. But we'll be back together with Patrick hopefully tomorrow if he can find his Ethernet cable. So let's wish him good luck with that in the comments. But for now, goodbye.